Hello, everybody. Well, this is probably the most radical and an insightful interview you will hear for a very long time. David Glennie is remarkably open about his pathway to, as he says, he failed up. He didn't particularly have a great career building up to this business idea. And for him, it was kind of like a default option. What else is there? I'm very well. I've got a number of advantages. I can start a business and I will be treated credibly. And he explores that in some detail. It's a really interesting, thought-provoking process. And the business has been driven by that experience, which has distilled in David's mind to two very firmly held beliefs, which propel everything he does in the business. So the first thing is that he's basically lucky and privileged. And what can he do to rebalance that? What can he do to help others who haven't had that privilege? And he's extremely humble about his abilities. He thinks in most situations he'll probably be wrong. So if you take those two things and then you actually believe in them, as David absolutely does, you then create actions which he describes them as unstoppable. So things that will happen in any case, whatever he does, they're set in stone. So he's set up a number of really radical things, and I mean radical, and a union in his own company, and fair pay across all 22 countries, the same terms and conditions for everybody. Hugely radical things that he's done and he's implemented them, and they are embedded now in the business. They can't be broken. They can't be changed. So this interview will take you into territory that I don't think many people, even B Corp owners watching this, would have thought of. It's profound, it's fascinating, and it's truly engaging. It's well worth a watch. So I recommend it to you. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. We're in for a very interesting Stressing Values podcast today. I have with me David Glennie from the extraordinarily named Voodoo Park, who's going to take us through his values, how he drives the business, what makes him tick. And I think you'll find some very original thinking in this interview. So, David, welcome to Stressing Values.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
It's great to see you, and I'm really looking forward to comparing notes on how you run your business and what you've done over the last few years. But just to set the scene for the viewers, can you just tell me about yourself, your path to this business, and what Voodoo Park does?
Yeah. So at Voodoo Park, we're 12 years old, and we make technology for other businesses, specifically in the financial services space. So we are building the platforms that manage people's pensions or manage people's wealth or insurance products. And we do that for typically companies that are much bigger than us. So often they're multinationals, they're sort of PLCs. We're very small. We're still sub 100 people. We founded the business sort of 12 years ago. And we either build things specific, so people give us a project and say we need a thing that does a thing, or we provide teams of people that work alongside their teams of people if they suddenly need to go much faster or whatever.
I see.
So we sort of do both. So we're kind of quite flexible, and we've got people all over the world. We've got people in 22 countries.
Wow.
So in some countries, you only got like one person. So
fair enough. Yeah.
There's only 100 of us, and we're in 22 countries. So it's not like we have buildings. So it's spread quite thin, and we're 100% remote, and we were since day one, not since the pandemic, but since 2012.
So you're veterans.
Yes. So when lockdown happened, it was just like, another Tuesday for us, because
Yes.
we'd already lived and worked like that for over a decade by the time we got to it. And I got into doing this. So I'm the founder and CEO, and I got into this, I guess, probably the same way as 90 something percent of people that do what I do, is I just sort of failed upwards till I got to a point where the only person that could fire me was me, I think, really. So I
That's
didn't
very
do very well.
modest.
I didn't. I think it's modesty. It's just being realistic. Didn't do very well at school.
Uh-huh.
And then I left school and I went to drama school because I thought that wouldn't be too much trouble, and it was very hard. And
Yes.
so I got booted out, and then I was an actor for a while, about half a decade, which was just basically being unemployed and drunk. And then I was in a band, which is just being unemployed and high. And then I started working I got into social care. So I worked for the NHS and for the National Autistic Society.
Oh,
And
that's a
then
massive contrast.
it really is just no plan. There's literally no.
You're just drifting from one thing.
There's no plan.
Right.
And then I'm doing that, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I'm 30 now, and I can't do this forever because pay is absolutely shocking, and the hours are huge, and I'm getting hit and bitten. So this, I need to do something else. So I started with the Open University, and I did because I only had A levels. So I started with the Open University, and I did a year with them and got a diploma. And then because my face fits, I sort of blagged a job as a developer, and which I found is a lot easier than people kind of make it out to be. It's not actually that difficult. I mean, I wasn't a phenomenal developer, but it's relatively straightforward work.
Is it sort of the mindset that goes behind it then? Is it that you're just a logical brain, do you think?
Yeah, I think kind of. I think, or it's a bit like musical. It's a bit like playing a musical instrument.
Okay.
It's sort of like that. It's relatively straightforward. The thing with technology is it's just made by other people. So the answers are known. It's not like science or art where there isn't an answer. You have to go and find it.
Yeah. So it's already been invented.
It comes with instructions. Exactly.
Yes.
You just have to be willing to read the instructions. So I started off sort of on the sort of a technical side, and then sort of ultimately, like a few years later, I was like, by this point, I'm like 40, early 40s, I think, must be. White enough and male enough and posh enough, I'm allowed to just set up a company, and people will give you business. So
okay.
Like I said, I think I failed upwards into this, but I think that's a very, very common story for people that run small to medium-sized businesses. I think that the super fun thing, and I think if there is kind of like an overarching idea in kind of what I'm trying, and one of the things that I'm trying to do, it is to start dismantling all of that, and we will need to do it from the inside as well as from the outside, right?
Yeah, so we're going to get onto that, I think, as we go through. I think stuff that you're doing is very original. So you've got up to nearly 100 people in 22 countries.
What's next is AI. So we're at a kind of a period which is very similar to where we were in the 90s. So the late 90s, the internet turned up.
Yes.
And we had a big change of government.
Yes.
And here in the UK, we said 3 weeks or 4 weeks away from a general election. There's a whole new technology player, the impact of which we're not completely sure of yet. And we're about to go through political change and a lot of big global factors going on, just as there were in sort of the 90s. So there's a huge change that will hit our economy and the businesses that work in it.
Yes.
So although I can't accurately predict where any of that will go, we do have a strategy for how we will get onto that wave and be dragged forward by it rather than crushed by it, which I genuinely think will happen to a lot of people, and will happen to a lot of people in our space. So at the moment, we in terms of building stuff, the engineering, of which there is still many years work to be done. But in terms of the engineering, our sort of competitors are Accenture and Capgemini, right? They're the people
okay.
they're the people that we meet in the green room, right? So now, obviously, they see AI as a really big ticket for them, kind of like in developing years. But they're in a position where they can just use their brand for credibility, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a company and you go, oh, we really need to use AI to increase our efficiency or to do something or to solve a problem, how are we going to? Well, let's get Accenture, right? I bet.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, right? It's completely fine. We can't do that. We can't.
You don't have that brand recognition.
We don't have that brand recognition. So what we're doing is we're investing heavily in AI within our own business.
Okay.
So we have our own AI platform called Amy, which is a multi AI network, and we are, over the course of this year, Amy is going to take over it already handles recruitment, but will handle finance and HR and administration and all of that as a sort of a single entity AI. And then our business then becomes our proof point. So I can't show you our massive brand and you go, oh, you're Capgemini, I bet you can do AI really well. But I can say, I want you to come and meet the AI that runs our companies.
Okay.
So that becomes like a real proof. That becomes a real proof for you.
That's proof of concept.
Yeah, exactly. So that strategy works even if it doesn't work, because if all we do is create massive efficiencies and better outcomes in our own business by using this technology, that's a win. I'll take that. But if it also means that we can talk to other companies and show them what this is what we're doing.
What they could do using your sort of ideas. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So I think that's the next 5 years.
Wow. And culturally, I mean, internally to the business, then what are you going to have to overcome? What challenges do you see in making that happen?
I think like the first problem is this is a strategy that involves riding two horses. And most of the times that I've got into trouble is because I've tried to ride two horses.
I was going to say, it's very common. You're trying to do two things at the same time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's really difficult, especially if you think in terms of like over time, you would imagine that our revenue from core business engineering and our revenue from AI will do that. You're hoping, or even better that. But let's assume that there's a decrease.
One comes down, the other goes up.
There's something like that, right? So if you imagine trying to ride that and put the right amount of focus on each of those two things as that changes, it's either not getting ahead of yourself or getting behind yourself, not allowing the thing that pays the bills and feeds everybody to wither because you got overexcited by a shiny thing.
Yes.
So you can see that there are sort of risks in that. And culturally, it's the challenge is making sure that all of the decisions that are made about the business are kind of cognizant of that balance.
Yes. Yeah.
So, so it's not, everything doesn't come up to the top. So it's quite flat and wide. So how do we talk about this in a way that people can intuitively have the right moment by moment priorities?
I was going to say, because you can't second guess so many people in 22 different countries.
No. Nor should you attempt to. And remember, because they're in different countries, the velocity of this and the reality of this is different.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not one thing. It's a complexity of things. So it's trying to. I think we have a good institutional mind and institutional personality for our core business. We need to develop an institutional mind and personality for change and transition.
So what is a client going to feel and see when they're talking to you about that? Is that what you mean? Yes.
And how do we collectively? So our instincts are quite similar. So when something happens in any part of the business, pretty much the business behaves in a common way,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So our instincts have become reasonably similar, and that's good. There's a continuity of experience. There's a that's, you know, for both internal people and for customers as well. How do we create that kind of that instinctive process, but that is able to manage something like change and transition, which is a way more complicated thing than what we were doing before. So that's kind of, I think that's the biggest internal challenge.
Yeah, I can just about get that. I think because typically the people I've seen in your sector I'm imagining they're getting quite excited about the new.
Yeah.
So is that one of the dangers, that they get carried away?
Distraction. Yeah, massively. The technology itself will be absolutely life-changing for all of us.
Yeah,
but not on Tuesday.
No.
Right.
Okay.
So there is going to be a process, and not everything will change at the same speed. There's whole chunks of the sector that we work in that will be very slow to go anywhere near this technology, for loads and loads of really good reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. They're quite conservative, solid institutions that need to be absolutely 100% accurate and safe. Yeah,
and transparent, and all of those kind of AI problems. Yeah.
So in terms of the way you run the business and the values that you adhere to, how do they stand up to this constant change? I mean, AI is just another one, isn't it?
Yeah. If we didn't ask that and we just talked more about belief, belief is much more powerful, because you can, if you are unhappy with your own behavior, you can change your beliefs in order to change your behavior.
Yeah. One follows the other. Yeah.
See, so you can follow that. So if you then sort of thinking, well, what would you have as sort of beliefs? Well, I think I probably got two, but the first one is, when you are evaluating yourself, or indeed others, if you subtract what privilege has afforded you, look at what you genuinely achieved.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you take that away. It was easy for me to set up a business, and people felt very comfortable giving me work because I looked and sounded exactly like they did.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I was the right age. I was in my 40s. I'd already lost my hair. You know, I already had a wife and photographs of the children. I had all the things that make people feels familiar, right?
Comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm white. I'm male. I'm straight. I'm able-bodied. I'm cisgendered. There's no, because having privilege isn't like being given something. It's just that everybody else had to take one step back, right? So I had nothing kind of going against me. So it's sort of very easy. So do you know what I mean? So if you then, but you kind of go, well, look, we recognize that isn't a good way of doing things. So let's start trying to subtract that almost transactionally from
running some sort of ledger. Yeah,
almost running it like a sort of ledger. So that's definitely like one idea is and one belief is kind of like privilege often overwhelms capability, right? In terms of the person that's sitting in front of you, or you sitting in front of them, you have to be really honest with your assessment of them and assessment of yourself.
Well, there's a lot in that. I do agree. Yeah.
Right. And the other one, and there's a brilliant example. So pleased, there's a brilliant example of this, of kind of belief too. And it was what's his name, Roger Federer, doing a commencement speech at some university, and it turned up on like some social media platform, and he was saying, so he played something like 1,500 and blah de blah competitive tournament matches in his career, right? He won 80% of those, right? Wow. He won 54% of points he played. Then that's him, right? That's him, and he is like literally one of the absolute. And look at
he's one of the greats, isn't he? Yeah,
54% is his actual success rate underneath all of that. You are wrong more times than you're right, such that to have a default belief that you are wrong is rational. So if you're in any situation and you're trying to make a set of decisions which are going to affect other people's lives, if you have as a default position something in your mind telling you, statistically speaking, you're probably wrong, what set of actions would you take as a result of doing that? You would find people that believed in that voice. Right? You'd find people that also thought you were wrong to get them to try and versify why you were wrong. You'd look for evidence that proved you were wrong, not evidence that proved you were right.
Yes.
If at the end of that process you go, do you know what? I think this is one of these 1,000,000-to-1 shots where I actually called it. Then you go, yep, we know we're doing the right thing. So a belief in your own fallibility gives you better outcomes. So this is the absolute opposite of everything that people say when you become a CEO, right?
Yeah.
All that totally. Stuff about, like, get your brand together and get your hero story. Believe in yourself. This kind of like wind blowing in your face, cape sort of lone sort of visionary.
Superman image. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Superman.
I think all of what you've said, it makes a lot of sense. But nevertheless, you are in the position you're in, and you've got responsibility for best part of 100 people.
Yeah.
And indeed for your family.
Yeah.
So, and you clearly have quite a profound philosophy. How does that apply to how you run the business? And how do you manifest what you've just said quite clearly, quite cogently? How does that manifest in what you do in the business?
Okay. So the first thing is anything like that, any sort of like belief system or structured thought is pretty meaningless unless you can transfer it into unstoppable action. So unstoppable action is action outside of yourself, right? So this is not just,
so if you stopped, it would carry on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not kind of down to what your mood is today. So I always try and hear both sides of the argument. No. So in terms of manifesting it within the business.
Yeah.
So we created the first, and to my knowledge, only union for software engineers in the world. The Voodoo Park Union is a trade union. It has a convener who is formerly convener of Unison, which was my union when I worked in care. And everybody that works for us, regardless of what country they're in, regardless of whether or not they're a contractor or a direct employee, or whatever the model is, they are a member of the union, and the company pay the dues to support the union work. The union and the company are both subject to a council.
Okay.
So should we end up in a dispute where the company is not in agreement with the union, the final decision rests with a third party, right?
Right. And who's on the council then?
So I nominate one person, the union rep nominates one person, and those two people have to find a third, have to agree a third person between.
That's like mutually agreed third person.
Yeah, mutually agreed third person, so that it can't be you can't end up you can't sort of end up with a split.
Wow.
So that means, what the union provides, as well as just the day-to-day niceification of working, right? So you don't go to HR to complain about every little thing that your manager did, because HR works for me, does not work for you. Always bear that in mind if you ever work anywhere. You can talk to the union, and the union have the ability to go and seek redress, get better outcomes for you without revealing your identity.
Yeah.
Right. So all of a sudden, there's none of that kind of payback, or kind of like, I didn't get my performance bonus because you complained about the way I spoke to you, or something. None of that. So you have all of that kind of niceification. It becomes a nicer place to work. It becomes a fairer place to work. So we have the same terms and conditions. This is a thing. I remember when we first set out, there was a really sort of big, important HR person came to see us and gave us a free consultation, and was basically just in tears, really. And she go, you cannot give people the same rights in different countries, right?
Oh,
you literally, you mustn't do that. The whole reason why you employ people over here is because you don't have to give them the same rights.
Oh,
really? Yeah, exactly. It's kind of okay.
Well, I suppose for many companies that is the whole reason.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't want to name names, but
plenty of examples.
I have done.
Yeah.
So everyone is then therefore treated the the same way in this sense. So if you go back to the belief idea, so think about the role of privilege. So the privilege I have from where I was born and the kind of education that I was afforded because of where my parents were born and all those sort of good things.
Yes.
And you go, well, that's a debt on the ledger. I'm going to need to do something about that.
The employment rules that apply to all of your staff, no matter what country, are the highest levels, like EU standard or something.
Yeah. Like if you work for Google in Paris, that kind of
right. And everyone's on the same terms.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Everyone's on the same terms. We have a pay grading structure, which is the same as the NHS have. So you know what your grade is. You are given a grade and an increment. That's what you are. And if you move from one country to another, which you may well do, because you can do that, right? Then you just move on to the pay scale of that country at the level that you are.
And that's related to the average wage in that country, is there, or something?
And that is reevaluated every quarter. So the 20, whatever it is, currently pay scales for each of the territories that we're in, those are reevaluated every quarter, and they move up by inflation, or you bear in mind that some of these places have very fast moving economies, to use kind of a euphemism.
Okay, so annual is just too long a phasing.
People could get into real trouble if you didn't do something more frequently than that. So we look at it on a quarterly basis and make adjustments in the different territories.
Wow. So I'm imagining lots of bureaucracy here and
or lots of AI.
Clerks. Or
lots of AI.
And I wondered if that was your answer. You've already got the AI doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly what AI is for, because AI is clerks, right? Where in terms of its capability at the moment, it's like a good second jobber. Do you know what I mean? The sort of person that does expenses in a large company.
Yeah,
that sort of person. It's kind of good second jobber. You know, you'd be gutted if they left, but it's a relatively straightforward, repeatable task.
This sort of philosophy had on the staff team.
We are because of that, because of the charity. So 10% of everything we make goes to the Voodoo Park Trust. The Voodoo Park Trust supports projects for women and girls. So that's like, again, off the privilege ledger.
Yes.
In the territories where our people come from. So there is, we hire well and people stay. And that's the impact that is had. Like we don't have churn of staff in the way that other people have. And we can get extremely capable. I mean, I joked earlier about developing a very easy job. It is if you don't do the bits that we do, right? If you do the bits I was doing, that's pretty straightforward. You can learn that in a weekend. But the sort of stuff and the complexity and the regulation around the kind of work that we do, you need proper super smart people, right? And we can attract proper super smart people in a way that our competitors really struggle to do.
And you keep them.
Yes. I think it was like, I haven't seen stats for so far this year, but none to my knowledge, but certainly last year, 0 resignations.
So sometimes though, even with this very solid and stable workforce, you must have times where things aren't going quite so well. Staff aren't doing quite what you hoped they would be doing. How do you manage those sorts of challenging conversations that almost every employer has to have from time to time?
Yeah. So now this is what the union is for. So
okay.
Think about process. Think about putting in place a process. So we if there are concerns around someone, we have a very clear set of processes that happen. We also notify the union that we're looking at this person is looking to go on a process, or someone's going to be having a word with them about something. The union contacts them. Do you want support? Do you want us in the meeting? I can talk you through the process and what's going to happen. If you remove the surprise and gotcha,
yes,
from these kind of interactions, and if you're not trying to prove a point or win a point, these will go much easier. It's not theatrical. It's just a thing that we are going to do. In the same way that if a doctor has to give you news or something, it's not theatrical. It's a transaction. It's professional.
These are facts. Yeah,
there's a professional context to doing this. That makes it much easier. Prior to that, this is hell. So when in small businesses where you can put the whole company in a car, and they are glued together with relationships that are very personal as well as professional.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Then that is extraordinarily difficult. That is very, very hard. And that's something that I struggled with, because I'm very, if you're kind of if you're a bit empathetic and you don't like to make people unhappy.
Yeah. Which I'm really picking up from you. That is you.
That I struggle with. Hence, is the process. The process is neutral, right?
Yeah.
If you do these things, it's fine. If you don't do these things, then you'll leave. And
and everybody can, if they're transparent and people know what those things are.
Yeah.
You've gone. We haven't got time to really cover it, but I know you've gone through several transitions in that 12 years, and some of them have been very stressful. So how do you manage stress?
Like sort of dumb TikTok top tip type sort of thing. So for me, being able to play a musical instrument, right? It's a strangely specific answer. So it's something like that. It takes exactly the right amount of concentration to do, right? So if I'm having in between meetings, like I'll
really? Just literally pick up the guitar and
in between meetings, because it consumes just enough to mean that you're not going to ruminate.
Yes.
But it's not hard to get into, like some other things like reading might be really, you kind of start reading.
You can't concentrate. Yes.
You can't concentrate because you're wound up. I think that is really, really practical.
Love that.
And the other thing is, and it's probably like in a belief thing, as well as kind of believing in your own fallibility, trust in your own incapability. The other one is you are probably lazy, because I think most humans are. And laziness is a really, really useful skill.
Well, it's powered the Industrial Revolution, isn't it? People
exactly that.
How can we do it quicker without us getting hurt?
Exactly. So when you're looking at something like you're dealing with stress, you're dealing with pressure, a lazy person is not looking to sort of wrestle all of that. They're looking to get out from underneath all of that. So it's okay, so we're going to use technology to deal with that problem. I'm going to delegate that over here, and we're just not going to do that. Right?
Yeah, we're not doing it.
Yay, I've arrived at a good place. Yes, you also made 3 really sound decisions, but you didn't pretend you were making them for reasons other than, wow, this is way too hard. I don't want it to be this.
That's very honest. What would you recommend to your 40-year-old self? Tips for starting a business.
Top tips for starting a business. Think, I think, is the big one. And think, be kind, never be cowardly. The last one comes from Doctor Who. never be cowardly is a Doctor Who one. But it's like, think, be kind, never be cowardly. I think those 3 are kind of portable. Like they work in a variety of situations. The most important of those is think. If you are put in a position in your life where you can make decisions that affect another person, right? Or you have another person that has to do things that you tell them to do, or something like that, you have a higher than average degree of agency.
Yes,
right?
totally.
More than most humans experience. Yeah. So with that surely comes some obligation to do something with it.
Yes.
And the think bit is not just about how do we make widgets or how do we sell milk, but the think bit is the wider implications.
So think is what
never be cowardly.
That's a brilliant way to sum up. Thank you, David. That's a inspirational ending. Inspirational interview. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure. Take care.